So for 14, the shape for a sign for a new business is displayed in quadrant 3 of the coordinate grid. After company review, they discovered the sign should appear as displayed in quadrant 1. So quadrant 3, this is our pre-image. Remember we talked about pre-images and images? That's our pre-image. That's where we're starting. And this is our image. This is where we're going to finish. So the question is, how did we get from the pre-image to the image? Which sequence of transformations best describes how they corrected the display? So let's look at all of these. Well, first of all, this is either going to be a single transformation or it's going to be a combination, and you have to figure out what they are. So let's look at the first one. The sign was translated 11 units to the right and 13 units up. So this is saying that we only translated the sign, right? Now, if you look here, look at this little piece right here. If I were doing a translation, that corner would still be on that side of the image, but it's not. And A says we're only translating. It's not just a translation. I've obviously done more than translate. I've either translated it and rotated it, translated and reflected it, or rotated it and reflected it, but I haven't just only translated it. So that's incorrect. The other thing that you can do is you can actually just pick a point on the original and pick a point on the new one, which we'll do in a second, and then compare how the changes came about. So what I was talking about was, let's pick a point. I'm going to pick this point right here, and that is at -9, -3. Now, if I were to follow that point on the new one, that point is over here, and that is now at 9, 5. So that's something to also give you a little bit of a reference. If I were just translating 11 units to the right, I would have added 11 to -9. That obviously would not put me at 9, so that's off. So let's look at B. B says the sign was reflected across the x-axis and then translated 11 units right and 2 units up. Now here's your x-axis. If I'm going to reflect the sign across the x-axis, I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to flip it over. Okay? So that means that it would be, let's see, here, here, and again, all I'm doing is reflecting it, right? All right? So if I do a complete reflection with this, I'm counting now, so I'm at -8, so that would be a +8. So what that would do is that would put my figure here. Okay, so if I reflect it, where's that corner? It's right there. And then if I translate it, is that corner going to be able to flip here? No. So B is out, because this says reflect it, which is what I just did, and then translate. So reflect and translate. Well, if I have this and I translate it, I'm just sliding it, which means that corner is still going to be on that side of the image and not that side. So that one's out. So let's look at C. C says the sign was simply just rotated about the origin. So they're saying that the sign was just taken and rotated around the origin. Now, if that were the case, this corner would be the same distance away from the origin as this corner. And you can clearly see this is closer than this one. So that's out. So our only option is going to be the last one. And let's make sure it says the sign was rotated around the origin. Okay. So I've got a rotation. We're going to take it, we're going to rotate it, and then we're going to translate it 2 units up. And if you look at this, if I were to rotate this around the origin, okay, if I were to rotate this around the origin, this right here goes from -3, -3 over, oops, here. Sorry, to that point. And then what happens when I move it 2 units up? There we go. So that is your correct answer. So make sure that you use logic on these. Some of these are a lot more complicated. They seem more complicated than they are, but look for key things. If it's just a translation, it's not going to change its orientation or its position. If it's a reflection only, then it'll be symmetrical about some axis, whether it be the x-axis, y-axis, kind of like I showed you the reflection here. If you do a reflection and a translation, remember, once you reflect it, once you start the translation process, it's not going to change position. So you saw that when we reflected it here, this stayed here, and it would have stayed on the right of the object, and we've got to figure out how to get it on this side. So when you look at these transformations, again, just do your best and look at the key ideas amongst each one of these transformations. And sorry, that was off the screen a little bit.